Okay, well, good morning. My name is Brittany Porter. I am a energy healer and a spiritual coach. We are doing a spiritual chat sessions this morning. So yesterday I was thinking about all of the things that have helped change my life. And I was like, I used to be in some like really dark places in my life. And some people, if you're in here, might be in those places too. And I wanted to share all the things. Okay, so I started making a list and I came up with 26 different things that have significantly impacted my life. And I was like, I should share these with everyone in case it helps you too. Or if we need reminders, because I need reminding as well. My spirit guides came in the other day and they're like, hey, we don't need to wait until things get bad before we preemptively like research things or like keep things that are working going. Like, let's not just stop doing things that are working because we're in a good space. And so this is going to be a reminder for me as well. So if anybody has any questions or comments as we go along here, please feel free, I'll read them. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm doing a TikTok live and that's who I'm talking to in the comments. Also, this will be up on YouTube if you're not able to stay for the whole thing. This is gonna be in 2 parts. I'm gonna do the first 13 today and then I'm gonna do the second 13 tomorrow. So it'll be same time, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I will give everybody like a little backstory about me so you know like how these things have helped specifically. So I had a lot of childhood trauma. Oh, good morning. I had a lot of childhood trauma. I was homeschooled until 9th grade. And so I had some real serious issues with social anxiety because I just never really knew how to like engage with people. Figured it out eventually, but that was a long journey. I was in a abusive relationship for a very long time, almost 7 years. I'm a mom currently. He's almost 11 years old. So I really battled with anxiety and depression. I had an eating disorder and body dysmorphia. I have healed through those things now. And not saying that like we're ever like fully healed, like there's always things that we can, you know, continue to like heal on a deeper level. Good morning, thank you. Good morning, Grand Rising. There's always things that we can continue to heal on a deeper level. But I have made leaps and bounds. And it was a very, very long journey. Okay, so the precipice point here was in 2017 when I had my spiritual awakening. I had kind of like, good morning, Sarah. I had a mini one in 2015. I went to a music festival and I was like, oh my gosh, like life is not what I was told. I also have a lot of religious trauma in my life. Nothing against religion. My grandparents raised me and my grandfather was a pastor. Southern Baptist pastor, and so like the things I do now, like energy healing and working with people, you like on like the more like woo metaphysical, was like way outside of that container space. So it took me a long time to uproot all of that self-limiting beliefs and things around that as well. Life's waves, and you got that good one. I'm finally on board too. So I'm going to share all the things that help me get out of those spaces. So the 13 that I'm sharing today are things that helped me when I was like very deep in my anxiety and depression states. Like I was in some very dark places. And from the outside, my life looked really good. Like I owned a business and I was going to school and I had my own, well, for part of it, I had my own home with my grandmother and my son, and I was taking care of my grandmother, and I looked from the outside like, oh, she has it together, but I was like crumbling inside. Like I was so depressed because I was living a life that I was doing for other people, not doing anything that I wanted to do for myself. And so it just kept compounding and compounding on top of each other, and then I had like a breaking point. So in 2015, like I said, I went to the music festival and I was like, oh, life is like way different than I thought that everybody had told me in my life. And then I kind of like fell back asleep a little bit. And then 2017 is when I got my shit rocked. Okay. I found myself crying on the bathroom floor while I was on vacation with my partner. And I was like, universe, I hate my life. I hate everything about it. Not my son, obviously, or like my grandmother that I was taking care of. I hate Lori. Not them, obviously, but like every other aspect of my life, not great. And so I said, I will do whatever it takes to have a different life. And the universe was like, okay. And then everything in my life started to get removed. Like, I went through a super, super intense dark night of the soul. Every single person was removed from my life. Family, friends, my job. I stopped going to school for a while. Like, just everything. And like, I look back now and I realize why that happened, because one of my greatest fears in life was being alone. That is why I would pull all these people and experiences into me that were not in alignment with me, because I was like, well, something that's not good for me is better than nothing at all. And so the universe said, okay, well, you're going to be alone for 1.5 years. And so I literally only saw the people that I worked with at a new job that I had started. I quit my business. I sold my half and was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but this is not it. And so I left, worked a whole bunch of numerous other jobs. And so I saw my son and the people I worked with, and that was it. Thank you for sharing these things with us. You're amazing. Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. Hey, Maisie. Hey, I need to text you, by the way, when I get done here. Okay, so I was very alone, and that made me face my greatest fear. And it was heart-wrenching. I had to, and that's my number one, is learning to be alone. I was so anxious and afraid of my own thoughts and myself that, like, I was never alone, ever in life. Like, I was always like with another person in a relationship, or like consuming stuff like media, like TikTok wasn't around back then, but like Vine, or just like whatever I could do to like not be with self, because I hated myself. Like, I'll just be very transparent. Like, I hated myself. I hated everything about me. And, you know, that came from a lot of trauma as a child, narcissistic, like abusive relationships, you know, friends that weren't really my friends that I was hanging out with, that I was taking like digs from, but like all of that stuff was being externally represented outside of me because it was my internal state. I didn't realize that then, right? And we only know what we know when we know it. But I had to learn to love myself, because that's the only person I had. I had my son, but he was like very young. So I had to learn to sit with myself and really face those thoughts, those anxious, ruminating thoughts of like not being worthy, or like nobody's gonna love me, right? That is what kept drawing people and experiences into me thinking that nobody was ever gonna love me. When my higher self kept on trying to tell me, you have to learn to love yourself through and through. And then when you do that, that is when you pull the right things into you that are in alignment with you. How are you going to pull people that really love you on a soul level when you don't love yourself on a soul level? Is the lesson that I learned there. Go for bushwalks and see nature on your doorsteps. Oh, we're going to get to that next as well. So I know it's super scary sitting with yourself and those thoughts, but the only way to get through them is to face them. Don't depend on someone else for your happiness. Absolutely. That will never fulfill you at the end of the day. Like, you have to really work on your own happiness with self. And I know that's difficult when you're a very anxious person and you have all these negative thoughts about yourself, but you have to override those. And we'll get more into like how to do that, because I know that sounds very like, oh, that sounds great, but how do I do that? So that's why I wanted to share some more in-depth things. So the next one was going out in nature. So I was always like a super, super anxious person. I didn't realize that I was an empath or a light worker or had ADHD. So like all of that kind of like hit me all at once when I was like 25, and I was like, oh, that's why I have been like a lot of my anxiety and depression, because I'm taking on people's stuff, not realizing it, and like acting like it's mine, or transmuting it like it's mine, right? And so when I was alone, what I did a lot of times was go out in nature and ground and like connect to Mother Earth. At that time, I wasn't really like trying to connect with Mother Earth like I do now, but like instinctually going outside, getting fresh air, going on walks, like disconnecting from things that were making me try to bypass falling in love with myself. Like, you can scroll on your phone all day to push down those feelings, but they're going to come up eventually. Okay. I I invited my inner child to play yesterday, ended up crying to release, but I'm good now. Oh, that's great. Crying is great. Crying is one of the things that has really helped me too, because I used to say like, oh, I don't have time to cry. Weak people cry. And that's like so opposite of the truth. Like, crying is a great way to release energy from your body, and like it's your emotions trying to like filter through you. So the more you suppress them, just like we're talking about, like the more you try and suppress those anxious thoughts and you don't sit with them, right, they're gonna come up in some other type of way. So I would go outside, go on walks, put my bare feet on the earth, just clear my mind, and like just literally be with my thoughts. Because I was like, I have to do this. Been told that for so long, it's almost seen as a good thing that one hasn't cried in years. Right. Like, being vulnerable is a superpower and a strength. Like, that's, I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. But that is like a real strength. If you can cry and release those emotions, it is so incredibly healing. Like, sometimes that's the only way to get tension out of your body. Like, I have had times where I sit down and cry and I'm like, thank God. Because that is the only way that it's going to come out. And just because you're crying doesn't mean anything's wrong. Like, sometimes your body just needs that release. Necessarily, people are scared of their emotions and they avoid them because they causes issues. Yeah, feeling your emotions is really scary sometimes, especially if you're not safe in your body. Like, ask yourself, do I feel safe in my body? That was a huge one for me. I did not feel safe in my body because of like trauma I had gone through, or like I had suppressed my emotions for so long that it was so weird, like feeling emotions. I didn't know what that meant. I'm also an Aquarius, so like I can objectively see emotions, but that doesn't mean that I'm actually feeling them. Those are like two very different things. Okay, there was a lot of crying in that year and a half. All right, so gratefulness. This is something that is one of the most pivotal things. Good morning. Hey, Susan. This is one of the most pivotal things that got me out of my anxiety and depression. And I had heard, like, I was already like getting into spirituality and listening to all these teachers. And I was like, this is silly. Like, them saying like, hey, if you make a gratefulness journal, it will change things. And I was like, that's dumb. Right? But I was at such a low point in my life. I was like, I will do anything. I do not care. And so I started writing 10 things every day that I was most grateful for. And when I first started making that list, I was like, I don't have anything to be grateful for. Which, looking back now, I'm like, girl, you're very privileged. Okay. But we love her, past Brittany. That's okay. So I was like, I don't have anything to be grateful for. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start with things that are easy peasy. Like, oh, I'm grateful I have eyes because I can see. I'm grateful I have arms so I can hug my son. I'm grateful I have a bed to sleep in, right? Just basic things. They're not basic to some other people, right? So doing that, I made a commitment for 30 days. So I'm going to do this for 30 days and see what happens. Like, a week in, I started writing things that kind of like transcended past those like simple things. I started saying like, oh, I'm really grateful for being a little bit happier. I'm grateful for, you know, feeling better when I go outside. You know, and it just kept elevating. And by the end of that 30 days, I was writing like things that are vastly different. I was writing, I'm so happy I'm stepping into my confidence. I'm so happy that I'm seeing the world in a different way. I'm so happy that I'm bringing different things into my reality. Like, huge differences in 30 days. Because now I figured out what happened after a little while. I did it for 60 days, actually. Like, I continued it. But I figured out that when you make a gratefulness journal, okay, and you're writing things on it, you are actually feedback looping that into your subconscious. And so your subconscious works like a computer, and when you give it a job, it will do things for you. And so I was telling my subconscious, like, hey, I have a list at the end of the day that we're going to write out every single day. And so I need you to find me things to put on my list. And so my brain actually like flipped perspectives. Instead of like looking at negative things around me, it was like, oh, well, Brittany has a list. We need to make sure that we're looking for things that make her happy and bring her joy. And so now like everything outside of me like changed. Like when I tell you that was one of the biggest changes in my life, that 30 days, it really was. Do you ever find yourself getting back into old habits and having to start over? Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. Yep. Sometimes you're not even like aware of it until you're like really deep in it and you're like, oh dang, I'm back in a pattern. Absolutely. Still to this day. Sometimes you get quicker at catching it, so like don't feel bad. That happens to a lot of people, like so many people. And then you're like deep in it and you're like, oh my God, I'm back in this. That has to do wonders for your self-esteem. It really did. It did huge things for my confidence and self-esteem, because my outer reality started to reflect what I was doing in that gratefulness journal. I was like, oh snap, life is getting better. Like it was literally getting better. And I know it sounds silly, but like if you make a commitment to do that for yourself for 30 days, you will see a huge difference from day 1 to day 30. If you just write 10 things every day that you're happy that happened, that you're happy for. Huge differences. Okay, I'm gonna turn my air conditioner down, but I'll be right back, okay? Yeah, that's what's been happening to me lately. Yeah, I mean, don't beat yourself up too bad, because like you're catching it though. Like there's a difference in being stuck in behavioral patterns and you not seeing it and being in there for a long time. And then there is a you that is like, oh, I got caught in that behavioral pattern. I see it. And so now when it comes up again, maybe I won't be in it as long. Like sometimes it just takes a while to get out of things because it's a learned behavior from like years and years and years and years. So like have compassion with yourself though, because you are at the point where you see that you're slipping back. So that is forward movement, if that makes sense. Okay, 1 second. Okay, so I'll share one with y'all that I'm still trying to break. Okay. I think you have a hard time remembering to write every day. Okay, so how I did that to fix that, because I have ADHD, I didn't know at that time, but it was very difficult for me to do like tasks, repeating tasks. I would say before I lay my head down at bed, I have to write this list. Like you can even put your paper on your bed, right, every day on your pillow, but it was like I literally cannot lay down and go to sleep until I write this list. So I would make it the very last thing that I did every day. Not like in the middle of the day, like very first thing when you wake up or very last thing when you do before bed. And then it's way easier for you to remember. And then when you start doing it a couple times, you get in the rhythm, right? Okay. So one of the behavioral things for me is biting my fingernails. Last thing, yeah, biting my fingernails. Like that's a behavioral pattern that I've been in since I was like little, because it's an anxiety coping mechanism. I'm not really that anxious anymore, but it's a learned behavior that's been like years and years and years of setting in. And so sometimes I'll do really good and not bite them for a while, and then I fall back into it. And it's an unconscious thing. Before, now I'm very conscious of it. Like I know and sometimes just choose to do it anyway, right? But I don't beat myself up about it too much, because I am consciously aware now. And like I know that I'm going to let it go, just like I did smoking. Like I smoked for a really long time and then I let it go eventually. And then I gave up drinking. Right? But it took a while. That's okay. Like if you're consciously aware of it, not saying it's okay to just like bypass and not get out of it, but like give yourself some grace and, you know, just keep at it. Okay. Then I didn't know that the nail biting, I did that all through college even. It's a stimming thing too with ADHD. Sometimes like if you have ADHD, you'll bite your nails. Because it's and I figured that out later. There's so many layers to biting my nails, y'all. You'll have no idea. Like I have like a revolutionary, like, oh my gosh, this is why I do it. But then it just keeps, keeps going back and back and back and back. And eventually I'll get to the root of it, okay? That's what I'm struggling with. I know it's bad for me, but I'm not ready to give it up. Yeah, you just got to keep at it, right? Just keep at it and have compassion for yourself and just keep at it. Okay, so the next one is changing media. So what you consume is what you will get more of. And that's a hard lesson I had. I used to love watching drama, like just love watching drama. Okay, and not saying there's anything necessarily wrong with watching things like that, but if that's the main content that you are consuming, that is what you will see more of. Or if you're listening to music, like if you're a just female, right, woman, or you will, if you're listening to music that is disempowering, you will see more of that in your outer reality. Or if you're watching things about people saying, oh, I'm broke, or I can't afford that, or whatever, and lack mentality, that's what you'll get more of. Because everything internally you see externally, and externally dictates what's going on internally. So I was listening to like music that was not great and watching TV that was not great, and then I started watching, like when I really started trying to heal my anxiety and depression, I'm watching other content creators that are talking about being anxious and depressed, which was so incredibly validating. I was like, oh, I'm not the only one, right? And we get in those traps sometimes because we're like, oh, this makes me feel better that I'm not the only one that feels broke, or I'm not the only one that feels anxious or depressed. But what I realized working with my subconscious is that it was keeping me in that vibration, in that frequency. Like, yeah, it was validating at first, and then it just kept perpetuating the cycle I was in. And so I had to make a conscious choice to get out of that cycle. And I said, I am only going to listen to content that makes me feel good, that lifts my vibration and frequency, and that gets me out of this. Like, I'm going to watch people that have tools to help me, right? And I'm not saying not to watch drama stuff or listen to whatever music you like, but I want to let you know, like, it has a direct impact on your outer reality. And, I watch some things sometimes that, probably aren't the best to be watching, but I have, like, changed, like, 95% of what I consume. And even when I'm scrolling on TikTok, if I'm scrolling and something starts to, like, pull me down, if that makes sense, like my frequency, and I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel good, you gotta skip that. It will really make a huge difference in your life. Oh yeah, there's a universal algorithm. Like Lucy's saying with the TikTok algorithm, like what you consume is what you get more of, and what you put out is what you get more of too. So there is a universal algorithm. Been listening to music and sort of singing it to myself, and that's been helping a lot. Oh yeah, that's beautiful. Singing, like you singing, is so healing for your body. Like it's healing it on like a DNA cellular level, because that's like very high vibration when you're singing, high frequency, and then it's you to yourself. So like you listening to somebody else sing can be healing for you, but you singing to yourself is going to be even more healing, if that makes sense. Like if I made myself a Reiki video, actually that's one of the ways that I healed myself too, is I make Reiki content for people like online, but I was actually making it for me to heal myself. And it was more healing than watching somebody else's Reiki, if that makes sense. Like I made it for other people too, obviously, but like I put it out there. But I was trying to heal myself and watch it back. Okay. The next one is working with your subconscious. So our subconscious is 95% of our actions. Like there's our conscious mind that we're like doing our daily tasks and just like doing the same thing like every day, and the same behavioral patterns and all these things. The subconscious, and a lot of that comes from childhood, but most of our subconscious is like from like when we're little, from like 5 to like 13 years old. Okay, that's when we're getting like programmed from parents, society, teachers, our friends, right? That is our how we behave based on what other people have told us. And so when people talk about deprogramming yourself, they're talking about working with your subconscious, right? And so you're okay, Lucy. So I took that very seriously. You know, I went to school for psychology. One of the reasons is because I wanted to figure myself out and like all the things that had happened to me. But I started learning as much as I could about working with my subconscious, and that has made like one of the biggest impacts on my life. And how that plays out is me changing the things that I'm consuming content wise and watching and listening to greatly change things. And then also doing the gratefulness journal, because I was feedback looping into my subconscious and doing like self-love, like affirmations, saying affirmations to myself like constantly in my mind. The more you say it, the more it'll sit in. Like your subconscious brain loves repetition. The more you do things over and over and over again, it overrides that old programming. Now I know I have a lot of reprogramming to do. Yeah, there's some things that are like very deeply ingrained within us that takes a while to override, but the more you do it, you will clear it out. Like I had massive like shame and guilt and lack mentality and just generational trauma that took me a couple of years to clear out. And you know, there's more healing I'll have to do, but leaps and bounds. But it took a couple of years to like keep actively working at it and repeating. And so one of the greatest things that I found was listening to affirmations at bedtime. That was a huge game changer. I made a commitment to myself to listen to I am affirmations now I listen to you are affirmations instead of I am affirmations, because and I recommend that to everybody, because when you're a child, you don't hear I am affirmations. You hear you are affirmations, like you are this and you are that. And so if you want to really get in there and dig up some of that old programming, listening to you are affirmations will do like way more for you. Not that I am isn't bad, because there's a lot of I am affirmations that help you with your like conscious adult minds. But anyway, so I made a commitment when I was doing the gratefulness journal to listen to affirmations at bedtime every single night. I could see huge differences in my waking life. Like I would listen to self-confidence and self-esteem. It really made a difference. And I still do that to this day. Like if I start feeling like I'm getting in the void space, if anybody knows what that is, the void space, or I start feeling like really energetically heavy, dense, I'm like, okay, well, we need to start listening to our affirmations again so we don't slip back, if that makes sense. Okay. So the next one is changing what I eat. So this is a big one, because I used to go, and like I'm not trying to shame anybody for doing this, okay? But I used to like eat horrible, like vegetables who, fruit who. I would be eating McDonald's and just all this fried food all the time. And like, I'm not saying I don't eat fried food now, because like I love me some mozzarella sticks, okay? Or some queso dip. Like I eat mad amounts of queso dip. If you want to hold more light in your body and be lighter energetically, you have to eat things that are infused with light. Like that is something I heard from somebody one day, and it is 1000% true. If you want to be a lighter being and of the light, you have to eat things that have light in them. So like fruit, vegetables, water, like all of that fried, like preservative, and y'all know there's chemicals. We don't have to get into like corporations making people sick, but that's okay. But there are so many negative things in junk food that is like literally making you sick and bringing your vibration down. And I'm not saying I'm perfect and I eat clean 1000%, but something that you can do to help get you there is like, well, can you choose to eat one more salad a week? Can you choose to eat fruit for one meal a week more than you're already doing? And that's what I did. You get addicted to those things. Like I'm still addicted to caffeine. Like I'll be very honest. Like I have a heavy addiction to caffeine, which I'm still trying to work on. Like that's my behavioral pattern. But you get addicted to the sugar in food, to the preservatives in food. So it's not like you can just go cold turkey sometimes. But can you eat one more meal a week? and then bump it up to, okay, now I can eat 2 more meals a week. And then eventually your body starts to detox off of those things and wants to eat healthier food, right? But if you can get like even at a 50-50% point where you're eating food with light in it opposed to 100% of junky food, right? You will feel a huge difference in your frequency. Like massive differences. You'll feel so much lighter. I don't mean like weight. I mean like your energy is so much lighter. And vegetables and fruit and water will heal you. And I don't mean like just on their like biological, biological point. I mean, there are, like I've told people before, like when I read their soul contracts, their higher self will be like, hey, we need you to eat some blueberries because there's something about the DNA coding in blueberries that there's a message in there for you. You don't always need to know what that is, right? Like your body knows what that is, but sometimes if your body's like, I really need to eat some oranges, it's because there's something in those oranges that your body like needs to heal, right? Or maybe a message from the oranges. Okay. Yes, food and I have a love-hate relationship. That's why you gotta do it little bits at a time, little bits. Okay. Can I eat healthier a couple meals a week and just start kind of like weaning yourself off? If you go to cold turkey, that's how sometimes we get snapped back because it's hard to override behavioral lessons and patterns like that. So you gotta do a little bit at a time and keep repeating. Okay. The next one is moving my body around. So I was an incredibly anxious person. Like incredibly anxious person, and with depression and all of those things, and I didn't realize I had ADHD and that I was an empath, and so like my central nervous system was just basically in fight or flight 24/7. I also had like major health issues from that because everybody knows like stress is like a huge thing on your health. It will wreak havoc everywhere. Dis-ease. You are not in ease. Okay, stress can cause diseases. I'm taking notes. I'm gonna try all of this. Oh, good. Okay, that's why I wanted to come on and share. Okay, so I also wasn't exercising when I was in that space because I had like this weird relationship with my body dysmorphia, and that sometimes I would get addicted to working out, right? Because of the dysmorphia. So I went a long time without doing physical activity at all, but that actually increased my stress because your stress hormones don't just go out of your body. Like they'll just sit in there and compress and compress and compress and compress. And then you just have like a whole stressful, wacky day. And then you have another and another and another and another because you're not getting those hormones out. And then they crystalline and harden. And that's actually one of the ways that you get blocks in your chakras is them crystallining and hardening in there. And so when I went like a long time without working out, if you haven't worked out a long time, you can't just like jump right back into it. Okay, your body will like literally fight you tooth and nail. And so what I did, if this helps anybody, is I found stretching videos on YouTube, and I would do 10 minutes every day. And it hurt like really bad to do it, but I was like, body, I'm gonna get you back in shape, and not to like we're a weight lifter or like super doing cardio every day, just to a point where I feel a little bit better. So I started doing stretches, and then I got up to 20 minutes, and I was like, you know what? I really like dancing. Like I really, really enjoy dancing. I love music festivals, and so I said, I'm gonna dance as a form of cardio. And then I found dance workouts, and then I like slowly built my way back up. It significantly helped my stress and anxiety because you just need to get your heart rate up a little bit for like 10 or 15 minutes, and it will take all those stress hormones out. So if like you've had a really shitty day at work and people have been on you, right? Come home and do some jumping jacks and dance around for 10 minutes, and you will feel so much better. I don't think people talk about that enough. I think people are always like, oh, well, you need to go on the treadmill and you need to do this and that. You don't need to do all of that. Like, that's great if you do that, like, yay. But if you just dance around your home for 10 minutes every day, you will feel so much better. Just get your heart rate up a little bit. Or if you go on a walk, you got to go on a brisk walk, okay? But like 10 minutes of like elevated heart rate and activity will get your stress hormones out. Okay, especially if you say the intention with your body of like, I am releasing all of this stress, and let it just do a dump. Okay. The next one is not complaining. So I used to be a huge complainer. I used to be so negative. Like, y'all know me, some of y'all know me now, and I'm like Miss Positive Patty, okay? Like rainbows and unicorns and fairies. I used to be so negative. Like, I would talk about just awful things all day long and complain and be like, I hate this, I can't stand that person, like, why is this happening to me, and just the world sucks. And I would just get more of that. I would just continuously get more of that. And I would pull more people in that complained, and I would pull more negative stuff in, like content, and just like negativity all around me. This is the one thing I've completed and accomplished. That's me. Haha, I complain a lot. No more complaining. I have to check myself now too. Like, I'm pretty positive now, but there'll be days when I'm complaining, especially if I'm around somebody else that complains, because I'm an empath. So I, like, sometimes I'll be taking on other people. So that's a me thing, right? And so I have to check myself and be like, I should not be complaining. I have a beautiful life. Not saying, you know, like, things are relative, okay, for everyone. But like, there are so many beautiful, wonderful things that I have to be thankful for. Like, there's no reason I should be complaining. Like, not saying that you can't be upset about stuff, like sometimes, right? But like, there's so much beautiful stuff in the world and happening around us. What you focus on is what you get more of. And when you complain, it literally sends those vibrations out into the universe. And we talked about the universal algorithm. You will get that back in many different ways outside of you. And it also pulls down your vibration and frequency when you're complaining. Like, it literally just sucks you down. You know what does give you an energy boost instead? Giving compliments to people, or being encouraging, or focusing on the things that do make you happy. Like, oh, there's a bird outside, look at that cute bird. Or like, I'm so thankful I have a car. Right? Like, there's just so many things that you can be thankful for. So when you start complaining, what I've done now is something I got from Joe Dispenza. I love him. Highly recommend. He said, say cancel. Like, say cancel in your mind, or say cancel out loud. And so when I start to complain, I'm like, cancel. And then I replace that with something that I'm grateful for instead. Like, oh, well, you know, I'm not going to spend my time and energy on something I don't like. So let's think about something I do want to, right? And sometimes it's easier than others. Sometimes we get real snapped back into the 3D. You gotta like get your way up out of there. But when you recognize it, the more you start to recognize it, that you're in that behavioral pattern, and say, oh, I'm complaining. Just take a second and be like, let me replace that. Cancel. Here's something else. And the more you do it, the more your subconscious gets used to it. It'll just automatically start doing it. Like, there was a time where I literally could not override my thoughts. Like, they were just constant, telling me like how much I hate myself and why I hate myself. And so it took me, like, when I had a conscious moment of awareness of like, oh, this is probably not good that I'm saying this to myself, I would have to replace it with something. And now it's automatic. If I have a negative thought about myself now, I'm like, absolutely not. We're not doing that. Nope, not doing that. It is normal, like, it's gonna come up, right? But now I'm at a point where no, I'm not aligned with that. Nope, cancel, next. Like, but you have to repeatedly do that to get it to set in. That makes sense. Okay, speaking more kindly to my past. So when I started like getting better and feeling better, I was like talking really negatively to me in the past, and I'd be like, you could have said this, and you could have done that, and why did you make this choice, and you're dumb for doing that, and you're stupid, and why would you do this, you know, all those things that we tell ourselves. And there was like a moment that I had that I realized, like, I would never speak to somebody like that. I would never speak to somebody's child like that, or a teenager or a young adult. I would never want somebody to feel that way. And I'm like, those pieces of me are not, they're me, but they're not me. Like, I'm a whole different person now. So like all of those beings of myself, like they were just doing the best that they could with what they had at that time. And like if they hadn't have gone through all those experiences and made all the choices that they did, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. Like I might not be talking to you right now, or whoever's watching this in the future. I could be on a completely different track in life. And like even though there's things that, you know, like we probably weren't proud of when we did them, like everything happened for a reason. And so me talking down to them is keeping me unhealed and hurting them. And so when I started asking them for forgiveness and saying like, I'm so sorry that I talked to you that way. Thank you so much for going through all of those very difficult things with all that you had, because they didn't have the tools that I have now. But I'm the person I'm now because of them. And so like when I stopped talking to them that way, I stopped talking to me in the present that way. Because I'm like, you know what? If I'm not going to talk to them like that, I shouldn't talk to me like that, because there's going to be a higher self version of me that would never speak to me that way. Like that's when I started getting into higher self and stuff. Like that is how you heal yourself past, present, and future, and pull yourself into a different reality. Is being more kind to past you and helping them, being the coach and the parent and the friend and the support that they need. And that heals you now and pushes you into the new higher self. So like give forgiveness and ask their forgiveness, and stop talking to them that way and saying like, hey, what we did probably wasn't the most optimal, but I love you. And thank you for what you did to get me here right now with what you had. Right? Okay. Who I surround myself with. So when I got out of the hermit void space and started hanging out with people again, I realized, and this is something from psychology, that the top 5 people that you hang out with the most directly impact your experience. Like we get intermeshed, our energy bodies and our energy fields, into people that we spend a lot of time with, and we start to take on their subconscious thoughts and their feelings, their emotions, and their opinions, right? And so it's very, very important that you are mindful of who is in your very inner circle. Because if you have people who are being very negative and poo-pooing on your ideas and your dreams and not really supporting you, that is what you will get more of. Because you're literally taking on that person's energy and putting it into yourself. And so I don't have very many people that are in my inner circle, right? And I'm not trying to say that we need to like put people above or below. It's just you need to be mindful of who is very close to you and who you're vulnerable with and who you share like very deep things with, right? Because it will change your perception on things. And so like the people who were inside my inner circle when I was anxious and depressed, I would not have that type of vibration and frequency near me now. And that's no judgment, because I was that person too. Okay, like that was me. But I'm very mindful about who I hang out with. Not like hang out with, like I'll hang out with whomever, but who I tell, like who I bare my soul to, who like know me on that type of level, right? Okay, so boundaries and saying no to things I don't like. I used to be a huge people pleaser, and that's how I got myself into a life that I didn't really want to be in, but I convinced myself I wanted to, because I would do things for other people, like basically what it's called like a servant. Like I put everybody above me, because if I do that, then they'll love me. Like if I self-sacrifice, then they will love me more. And that wasn't actually true. What I was doing was creating codependency. You said, yeah, this one too. Yeah, I was creating codependency. And they were literally just like there to eat my energy, but I was letting that happen. And then I would get so mad at people or my jobs or, you know, the circumstances around me, because I'm like, why does everybody treat me like shit? Or like not value me? It's because I didn't value myself, and I was just letting that happen. And I'm not saying that people treating you badly is necessarily your fault, because like not saying that at all. But when you make a doormat out of yourself, like, people will treat you how you let them treat you every time. So if you let people walk all over you, or, you know, talk to you whatever type of way, or treat you whatever type of way, they will. And that's who you pull in. But it's not their fault. A lot of times, and I'm not saying that for abusive relationships or anything, like, that's a whole different thing. But you have to stand in your own power and say, like, no, you will not talk to me that way. I will not be treated that way. I don't want to do that. That was another big thing. I would just say yes to everything and fill my plate because I was so afraid of being alone. I was just like, I'll just do whatever with whomever, because that will fill the hole in my heart, right? But it was all these things I didn't want to do or go to or be at. And so now if I don't want to do something, I just don't do it. Like, and if that hurts somebody's feelings, like, I'm not going to be ugly and tell them, like, I don't want to hang out with you, right? But I am so protective over my energy now that if something feels out of alignment or off, or like I just don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it, because that does not leave me with enough energy to do the things I do want to do. What about when I feel I have to do things for people because they won't take care of themselves? You have to ask yourself, am I being an enabler? Because that was me too. Like, I would also, like, I was an enabler. Not saying that's you necessarily, but, like, can they not take care of themselves, or are they just so used to you taking care of them? Because that was definitely me. I would find people to be near me and in my life that needed help, so I would feel some type of worthiness. But all I was doing was I was an enabler. Right? And, like, trying to find love outside of myself. And so, like, people will figure their stuff out. That's another one that I found. Like, when I stopped helping everyone and focusing on myself, it is wild the amount of people that dropped out of my life. And they were fine. But I thought that I needed to take care of them. Turns out, when I stopped supplying that, they just left. And then they were fine. That was a story and narrative that I had built in my mind. Not saying that's you exactly, but this is something to think about. Right? Okay. Yeah, saying no to things I don't like or don't want to do. I only have so much time and energy during the day. Like, I literally do. Like, I tell people that I hang out with now that, like, when I first meet you, sometimes I don't answer you for like 6 or 7 days. Like, if it's something important, like time management, but if somebody sends me a text message about whatever, I tell people right off the bat, sometimes I will not text you for 6 or 7 days. I'm a mom, single mom. I have a business that I run. I have a lot of responsibilities. I have 3 dogs. I take care of my home by myself. Okay. I only have so much time and energy a day, and the type of work that I do is helping people, like supporting people. So I tell people, like, I'm not going to get back to you for 5 or 6 days, and please don't take that personally. That's just how I function. And if you want to stay in my life or in my circle, like, great, but I cannot promise you that I'm going to message you in 5 or 6 days. And most of the time they're like, okay, cool. Because they're the type of people who understand that. They get it. They're most likely the same. And I think we, like, put so much pressure on, like, if somebody didn't text me back, like, years ago, I'd be like, oh, they don't like me, or maybe I made them mad, or people are adults. If somebody has a problem with you, they need to say it, otherwise there's not a problem. Like, that's something I learned too. Like, I would overanalyze every conversation and relationship that I had with somebody and be like, well, what about this one? I don't care anymore, honestly. Like, if you're an adult, and I don't mean to say that like callously, but if you're an adult and you have a problem with me, or I said something to you that hurt your feelings, like, I try my best to be so mindful about the way that I say things and how I say things to people, but I can't always, like, overanalyze everything I'm saying. So if I did something to hurt you, I expect you to tell me. And I know that's uncomfortable sometimes, but we can't sit here and overanalyze everything we're doing and saying. Like, don't be a shitty person to people, obviously, but, like, that overanalyzing and everything, like, if that person has a problem with you, they'll tell you, or they should tell you. Otherwise, y'all don't have a good communication with one another, right? Okay. Learning not to mask. I've got two more. Learning not to mask. I masked for so long because I was so scared to show people like who I am, but I didn't want to show people who I am because I hated myself. If that makes sense. So I would build these like personas and personalities, and I didn't realize at the time that I had ADHD, and that's the ADHD thing. But and sometimes still I have to make sure that I'm not masking around people in circumstances. But when you mask 24/7, what ends up happening is you lose yourself. You forget who you are, and like you become the masks. And then there's like your actual personality underneath, like you don't even remember what that is. And so that's why the universe kind of put me in that 1.5 year limbo of me being alone, so I could remember who I actually was. And then it took me like actively learning not to mask. Like, yeah, it's hella uncomfortable, I'm not gonna lie, not masking. And it takes time. It took me a couple years to figure out how not to do that. I feel like I'm always taking off and putting on a mask. How do you learn not to do that? Well, one, learning that I'm an empath and a light worker, and learning what boundary shielding and clearing significantly helped, because that's actually how I figured out that I was masking. I didn't even know. Like I just didn't even know I was masking. I just thought that was like normal behavior to like be a chameleon everywhere. Okay, so learning about boundary shielding and clearing, because then you're learning what's yours and what's not. Because like even now sometimes like I'll be around people and I'll start taking on their energy, and like I don't realize I'm doing it, and I have to like actively, consciously in my mind, like while I'm talking to somebody, say like, is this me or is this them? And not like in a negative way, but like I'll take on people's personality quirks and traits very quickly if I'm not being consciously aware, and I have to say, that's not me. That's not me. Crystals really helped me, like grounding crystals, keeping those with me. But just being conscious, like, is this mine, is this not? Right? Yeah, I've started doing that. And you have to work on your self-esteem and confidence. Like, I understand that so much. I'm definitely an empath. Yeah. Like, and I have like 5 more minutes here. Okay, so my blue hair. Like, I wanted to dye my hair for like so long, but I was so scared because like I live in the South and not a place where like people have colored hair. Okay, and so it took me a long time to build up self-esteem and confidence to that, but that was a part of me demasking, because this is actually like more me. And so I also had social anxiety, and so I would say like, well, I'm gonna give people a reason to stare at me. If they're gonna stare at me anyway, then I'll know why they're staring at me. Now I realized later that I'm a light worker, and that's why people stare at you. We don't have to get like super into that. I've made videos about that, but but that's why people are generally staring at you. But like this was a part of me demasking and just being me. But I also had to face criticism. When you are being authentically you, it's very polarizing for people. People either love you or they hate you. And at the end of the day, you have to say, well, I'm not for everybody. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And that's fine. I don't want people in my life that don't like me. I do not want anybody around me that's not in alignment with me. I do not want fake relationships. I don't want people that are wishy-washy. I would rather have polarizing situations. I would rather somebody say, I don't like you, out loud to my face. Because then I'd be like, great, I'm not for you. Instead of doing that weird, like, subtext, subconscious stuff, right? Like, just please tell me, or just don't hang out with me, or just don't engage with me. Like, I would rather have polarizing people, and then somebody be like, I love you, I love your energy, great, then let's be friends. But if not, that's fine. People either love me or absolutely triggered by me. That's me too. Thank you, V, for that. Yeah, like, you either really like me or you don't. And when I started making content, that was a way of me demasking too. Like, that really helped me demasking, because I had to face fears and learn to be confident and have self-esteem. And I had to take criticism for people. And there was a day that I woke up and I was just like, well, I'm not gonna be for everybody. And the people that do resonate with me and like my energy far outweighs the people who don't. And those people are probably hurting inside. I had this conversation with my son last night. People who intentionally try and hurt you are hurting very deeply inside. And they're trying to eat your energy because they don't make energy for themselves, or they're not getting enough love, or they're not getting enough of support. Like, for you to actively try and hurt somebody, you are hurting very deeply inside. Like, then we can hold compassion for them, which is like a whole different thing. And not saying to just let people treat you any type of way, but like, you can hold compassion for somebody who is talking negatively to you and say like, I'm sorry that you're hurting inside. Like, you don't have to say that out loud, but I had that conversation with a friend yesterday. Yeah, they're hurting. And like, not that that's it's not your problem. I'm not saying like you need to fix them, but like, just be compassionate and just like, I'm not trying to actively hurt people, but I'm happy. Somebody who is not happy is trying to drag you down so you're in the pits with them. And they think that will make them happy, right? The only thing I hate is how lonely the spiritual journey is. There are people like us, but so far away. Yeah, sometimes it can be a lonely journey. That's why I always make sure and tell people, like, you got to get yourself out into places and spaces where there's people like you. That makes sense, even if it's online, so you feel validated, and they will come, they will show up. You just have to keep on demasking and putting yourself in places and spaces that there are people like you around, right? Hi, hello Nicole, hey, glad to have you here, second time in the live. Yeah, the internet has been like a huge thing for me, like finding support groups of people like I'm doing now. Find you some people online, and then when you start seeing and realizing like, oh, there are people that are like me, it's easier to spot them in the wild or like out and about, because you get better at reading energy and reading people and like listening to your intuition, like going towards the things that feel good and resonate. Okay, yeah, we do have a support group. There's a link in my bio, is Journey to Awakening with Brittany and Ray, and it's a whole collective of us, like Starseed, Lightworkers, Empaths. Like, we would love to have you in there, anybody that would like to join. It's Journey to Awakening with Brittany and Ray, but there's a link in my bio, you just go right there. I'm not doing readings, this is a spiritual chat today. I might do readings later though. Okay, this is the last one, okay? So listening to my intuition, now that we're talking about that. I used to bypass my intuition all the time and be like, oh, it's just my logical mind trying to override, you know, whatever. Every single time, I'm talking about every single time that I have ignored my intuition on something when it was trying to yell at me has bit me in the ass. Every single time. And it has taken me a very long time to understand that I don't need to know why. I don't need to know why. If you are getting to a point where you figure out why your intuition was telling you not to do something, it's too late. And then you keep on repeating that cycle. Like, if I feel something is going to be icky or like I just have a feeling that something is not going to be alignment, either with that event or with that person, like, I just go with it. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. Like, sometimes I just gotta learn the lesson. But like, that has been a huge game changer. If something feels great and in alignment, I go with it. I don't always need to know. Like, there have been times where, like, there was this one job that I was at, and my intuition kept on saying, you need to quit right now. I was already thinking about quitting, but it was still like a hard decision. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna quit. And I quit. And 2 weeks later, the whole company overturned management. And like, I have had so many instances like that where I listened to my intuition and it turned out so favorably for me. But then I have had other times when my intuition was screaming at me and I did it anyway. And I was like, wow, I really wish I hadn't done that. And that transcends to everything. It's not even just people and experiences. Like, I've had my intuition come through and be like, you should check the air in your tires. And if you bypass that, that's how you get a flat. Like, I've had that before where my intuition's like, you should check your tires. And I was like, okay. And my tire had like 9 pounds of air in it. And I could have had a really bad day on the highway with a flat tire. But I was like, okay, I hear you, intuition. I will do what you're asking me to do. Do you think that words and power manifest that as well? Absolutely. I think that people don't put enough weight on how your words, and we're going to get into that tomorrow, about how your words can change your outer reality, because you're actually like taking a vibration and frequency and bringing it from the ethers into matter and putting that out into the universe. So we'll talk about that too. And that's actually one of the things that changed my life, was changing my languaging. Like, you already wanted to quit your job. Do you think you manifested that? Oh, thank you for the heart. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's part of it. Like, I had already kind of put the intention out there that I wanted to quit. And so I do think that it like one like went with the other, if that makes sense. But then on the other end of that is like, how much of that was my intuition telling me to go ahead and put that in motion of me saying it. So kind of like it goes one and the other. Okay, so but listen to your intuition. Like, you don't always need to know why, because once you find out the why, then it's too late. If that makes sense. Either good or bad. Okay. Like, is the universe blessing you and testing you at the same time? Sometimes, like with that job, like it was a blessing, because like there were some very negative things that ended up happening at that job after I left, right? But it was also a test from the universe saying like, are you going to choose yourself? And are you going to continue doing something that's not in alignment with you? Or are you going to step into your confidence and just be like, okay, well, I'm going to be fine either way. Let me leave. Right? There are so many accounts using your image. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Paula. I do want to make a statement really quick that there are a bunch of fake accounts of mine. And there's one in particular. It's called Soul Harmony Magic with a K. And mine's with a C. I only have one account. This one. I will never reach out to you and ask you for a reading if you want a reading. We'll never do that. And this is my only one account. So if you have anybody reaching out to you, or that Soul Harmony Magic with a K account, like they're trying to scam you. I do not want you to get scammed. They're trying to get you to send them money for a donation for a reading. I will not reach out to you and ask you if you want a reading. If you want to get one, great. Like, if you want to go to my website and get a reading, great. But I will not reach out to you and be like, hey, your ancestors let me know that you need to blah, blah, blah. Okay. I blocked one with a K. Yeah, this is my only account. This is it. Okay. So, Thomas, if you want to send me a message, because I do have to get off here in a second, but if you want to send me like a message, like a direct message, I'll answer your question. But just remind me in the messages. Okay, so today was the first 13 of the 26 things. Tomorrow I'll be back on at the same time, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, to talk about the next 13. These 13 that I talked about today are the things that got me out of my anxiety and depression and my body dysmorphia and my eating disorder that I had. And so this was like when I was like very low vibrationally. So tomorrow, the next 13, like those things still work for me now, like the ones we talked about today. But tomorrow we're going to talk about like how to elevate your vibration and frequency, like way past that. Like that's when I started like really changing, making major changes in my life, and the things that I did to get to me to where I'm at right now. So like having a coaching practice and loving my life and being happy and like just in a very much better vibration and frequency. So they're all very helpful, but tomorrow's section is going to be different. So I hope Mr. Pugs, he's licking his butt. Anyway, okay. So hopefully this was helpful. If anybody has any questions about the things that I was talking about or need resources for some of the things that I mentioned, always feel free to reach out to me on Instagram, Soul Harmony Magic with a C. Okay, just like this account here. Yes, Sarah. So you can always reach out to me. Speaking of readings, so Mr. Pugs, yeah, he was licking his butt back there of me. So I was like, everybody's gonna hear you. If you do need help with the things I was saying and some extra support and encouragement and somebody keeping you accountable and teaching you how to do these things, because I know what it feels like to be in like a deep, dark hole and like trying to claw your way up out of there, it can be very intense sometimes. And having a support system is sometimes a lot easier. So if you do need help with those things, I do offer soul alignment sessions, and this is to help get you back on track or get you to where you want to be. And then I also have a coaching program where I help people with ADHD who are also spiritual, who need accountability like on a weekly basis and somebody to talk to and actively like work out things like self-limiting beliefs, help you with your self-confidence, your self-esteem. Maybe you want to start a spiritual business or become a coach yourself. I love helping coaches become coaches. Like, it is one of my favorite things to do. And it's so funny. This is so representative. I have to be the doctor in like 5 minutes, but it's okay. This is so representative of how if you just keep working at something, it will eventually work out. So like, I would spend hundreds, like not like thousands of hours listening to all this content I do, and then I got into coaching and I would watch all these videos about how to become a coach, like hundreds of hours, okay? And then a couple days ago I was watching a video about coaching and I realized I wasn't listening to it for me anymore. I was listening to it to help coach other coaches. And I was like, it really just like completely like solidified in my mind, like, oh yeah, I'm not in that space anymore. Like, I'm helping other people become coaches because I have figured out how to be a successful coach. And I was like, oh my God, like sometimes you have those realizations, you're like, all the work that I did, I'm here now. And like, I've been helping people, but like, it really just like clicked in my brain like 2 or 3 days ago. I was like, oh my God, I'm not listening to this information in the same mindset that I was before. So, but just keep at things, like just keep at it and it will eventually solidify in your paradigm. Okay, that's how your subconscious works. Okay, so thank you everybody for coming today. If you weren't here for the whole session, this will be up on YouTube later this evening, and then I will see some of you for the next session tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Yeah, Thomas, just send me a message and then I'll send you one back. And then I hope everybody has a very magical day, and I will see you later. Bye.